Have you ever wanted to do something but felt like the risk was just too high so you didn't? Or have you ever wondered what makes people commit to doing something that might make no sense to you? Well, I used to think about the same things until I one day decided to take that risk. My name is Omar Hajali, and I'm here today to share my story on my passion for automotive design. When I was 16 years old, not even old enough to legally drive, I bought a car. But not just any car. I bought a 28-year-old Nissan 240 SX, one that wasn't really street legal and needed a lot of work to get on the road. I myself had no experience at the time behind a wrench, other than a grade 10 auto course, which really didn't amount to much. But I wanted to learn. I always thought to myself, how do people gain experience working on cars without damaging their own? Well, the answer is unless you intend on becoming an apprentice, you have to take that risk. And so I did. I always dreamt about one day owning this car, and now that I did, everyone said I was crazy for buying it. Well, from that point on, I had to get to work. So I parked it at a buddy's house because Pops didn't know I bought a car that didn't run, and I started to work. My approach was kind of like trying to solve a puzzle backwards. Trying to diagnose without a good understanding of theory made it impossible, so I had to study the car as hard as I had to study in school. Eventually, I realized I may have bit off a bit more than I can chew. It was like endless problems kept falling from the sky, and I realized after putting a lot of time and money into the car, there was no turning back. People who knew me might have said I started projects and never finished them. Well, this would be the turning point in my habits as I realized it was too big not to finish. Wiring is probably one of the most tedious parts of diagnostic, but I knew I hated it and I decided to embrace it. The car had all sorts of wiring problems, and so this picture is from when I pulled every last wire out of the car and spent several months deluming, reducing, and correcting that wiring. Not only that, but the car had a lot of rust. So, like any rational person, I stripped the doors, I stripped the glass, body panels, suspension, motor, transmission, everything was pulled, you name it, from that body. And I scrapped that body and I bought a new rust free shell. After a few months of putting parts back together, the car was running. And after a paint job, it was practically built from the ground up. At this point, it had been approximately a 2 year project, and on the way, I had gained experience from friends asking me for help with their cars, and I began experimenting with what works on my car, like big brakes, racing suspension, power steering. I even began making the car fast by adding a turbo and learning EFI tuning. Along the way, I blew the motor, replaced the motor, rebuilt the motor, and at this point, I was a relatively experienced mechanic. I applied for a job as an auto tech and got hired almost immediately. My second task at work was a test from my boss, and it was doing an engine replacement on an '09 Honda Civic, and I was given a time limit on it. I passed, and since then, I began to learn really fast and even started teaching other mechanics about welding and turbo systems. Today, I'm registered with the Ontario Motor Vehicle Industry Council, and I've decided to further my experience in the auto industry to automotive design. I learned that with commitment comes great reward. So, what makes people take risks like I did when I purchased that car? Well, it's simple. It's the drive to learn, the drive for investigation, and the drive for improvement. Thank you.